Hi guys, I thought I'd do a quick video on MySQL and how to monitor MySQL using Nagios Core or Nagios XI. So I'll be using a completely free plugin that you can find on the Nagios exchange, where you can find tons of free products and free plugins that you can monitor everything. So today I just thought I'd pick out how to monitor MySQL servers. MySQL servers are so widely used. I use it for WordPress, you can use it for websites, you can use it for production software, anything you can imagine. So today I'm going to be showing you how to use Nagios XI Nagios Core with this plugin to start monitoring your MySQL server. And not just that it's up, you could actually dive in a little deeper and monitor if there's any slow queries, connection times, if there's a slave. So just keep watching and I'll show you how easy it is to get started. The first thing we're going to do is log into our Linux client. So this is the database server that we're going to be monitoring. So I'm running Red Hat Enterprise Linux here. I'm running CentOS here, but this will work the same in any environment running MySQL. So I'm going to log into MySQL command line with the -u and the -p and provided the password, the root password. This should give us full access to create users and grant permissions to that user. So the user we're going to create is Nagios, and it's on localhost. So I'm creating the user Nagios on localhost identified, and this will be the password. If you're not familiar with SQL syntax, this is pretty standard stuff. If you're new, or you can also do this if you use something like PHPMyAdmin, you could do it in there as well. So we'll go ahead and create our user. Again, this does not have to be a Nagios user, it could be any user, but you just know that when we go and configure Nagios monitor, you need to provide a user that actually is valid with a valid password. So we're going to grant privileges on all. And this is *** notation, so it's going to be on all databases from all locations. So all the databases locally from all locations, and tables, databases and tables to Nagios, the user that we just created. So just note there is a difference when you say localhost. There is a difference from localhost and specifying from a specific host. So we could also identify it, and I see here we're going to create the user Nagios again, but now it's going to be from anywhere, not just localhost. So and it's this % notation that will say it could be from any source, and identify it, and we'll give it the same password. Just realize there actually is two separate user entries for Nagios for this user. It's one's from local, one's from anywhere. We'll go ahead and set a password. You technically set two separate passwords because they are technically two different users. And we'll go ahead and grant privileges, all privileges, to all databases and tables on our MySQL server, MySQL server. So we can go ahead and do that, and then we're going to flush privileges. So the users and privileges we just defined will be updated, and now our MySQL server will be running correctly with the privileges and the users we just created. Once we do that, we're going to go back to our Nagios server. We're no longer on our database server. We're going over to our Nagios server, and we're going to the Nagios exchange site, so exchange.nagios.org. Tons of stuff on here. You go and search, tons of just plugins for anything you might want to monitor. So if you go ahead and search for check_MySQL_health, it'll go ahead and pop this up. It's the only one listed under that name, so come right up. And I got good reviews here. You read through it, got some great reviews. It actually does a lot of things that you can monitor for. So index usage, buffer pull hit rate, query cache hit rate, connection uptime. There's a lot of things this will check for on your database server. So it's a really great plugin. So I went ahead and clicked on website. On the website it has a download option. So we went straight to developer. So this is the guys that actually made the plugin for Nagios. They just made it freely available to use, which is very nice of them. So we're going to go ahead and click on download, and we're going to download the latest version. You can also use wget to download this as well, and I'll put those in the notes. So I'm just going to click on this and download our source code. To run this, just be aware it does require some system libraries and a Perl module. Um, so I'll have some notes on that. So if you encounter any sort of error, just realize you should have the MySQL server installed. Even if you don't have it running, I believe you need some libraries. It also needs a Perl module, the DBD MySQL, specifically that module. You can also use Yum to do the install, and I'll show you the syntax for that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in /op because we are going to compile this code. There is some source code that does have to be compiled, but it compiles pretty quickly, so it's not that big of a deal. So I'm going to go ahead and create a folder in /op, and I'm going to move my compressed file we just downloaded, our check MySQL health source code over there. Now let's go ahead and start uncompressing and compiling our source code. So if we go over to our /op directory, we're going to do a tar minus vxzf, and that's to uncompress and unzip. If you notice there, it's going to create a bunch of standard files. And if you compiled source code before, it should look pretty familiar. So we're going to do a .configure. I'll go ahead and check for our prerequisites, if the system's prerequisites are there to be able to compile this source code. So you should have GCC and Perl, pretty much most standard stuff. Any Linux distribution install should have. We're going to go ahead and do a make and then a make install. Again, this is very, very fast to do this. The make install will create a plugins folder locally, and in there we'll have some binaries created and Perl scripts generated as well. So we're going to do a make install and just quickly go through. And if you notice, we're going to go into our plugins folder. It says /op check health check MySQL health /plugin -scripts there, if you notice the folder name. And in there, we're going to take a look at some of the files. And we can go ahead and run the binary from that directory. And I like to do this because it's going to go ahead and test to make sure that it is working correctly before I go through and set up the Nagios part. So I want to make sure the plugin actually works. So no matter what plugin I use in Nagios, I go ahead and run on the command line before I go and configure the server to use this plugin, because I also want to make sure that what the information is returning is what I'm expecting and that it will be useful, for our environment. So if you notice, here is our plugin scripts folder, and in there you see the green file names, meaning they're executable. And we're going to do a /, it means current working directory, and we're going to call our check health executable here, and go ahead and run a command. If you hit check health, check MySQL health, and hit enter, it will list a bunch of options to run this command. So I'm just going to do it a very basics command checking for connection uptime. So we're going to do check health -h for host. I'm providing the IP address. You can go with the fully qualified domain name. I'm going to put in that user information that we created on our MySQL server initially, right? So the first step we did was to create the MySQL server, username, password, and then mode. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about mode in a minute. So mode, right here I'm trying to check is uptime. You notice I did get this error message, and I want to show this to you so you can be aware that this module needs to be installed. So you can just do a yum command. If you install MySQL server, for the repository, this will automatically be installed as well. So that will take care of that error message. So you don't have to install the Pro module from C-SPAN directly. You can download the precompiled binaries from the repository. So now let's go ahead and run that command again, and you're going to see right away it gives us our uptime, and database has been up exactly 100 minutes. So now let's go look. If you just type in check _MySQL _health, here's the information I was talking about. Look at all the modes. It's pretty much all the different tasks that the plugin will search for and look for. So again, you have lots of options here on things you can do to monitor your database server. So again, it's a very useful plugin. tons of functionality. So some easy things I would check for it right off, right, is connection time, uptime, thread count. You want to make sure how many connections are being established. And there actually is one for slow queries. So if you want to check if there's any slow queries, you go ahead and do that as well. So tons and tons of functionality here that you can read through. You can also go to the developer's website to read more detailed explanation on this plugin. So the next thing you want to do is go ahead and start configuring the MySQL server to be monitored by Nagios. So we're going to be doing that completely on the Nagios server side. So if you bring up a command prompt, we're going to look under user local Nagios etc objects. There is a commands folder. So we're going to define our commands using the plugin we just configured, downloaded, and compiled. So we go. I usually go towards the bottom, and you can define, and we're defining a new command. So if you look at some of the previous examples, you kind of see the standard format of defining a command. So we say define command, open bracket, close bracket, and we give a command name and a command line. So we type in command name, and of course this is very syntax specific, so be sure watch your cases and everything. So we just can call it, and you can call it anything here. I'm just going to call it check MySQL health. And then on the command line, this is going to specify the plugin and the arguments that we're going to use to use this command. So we're going to do users1. That's just a variable. Don't worry about that. It's just a system path to where your plugins are. And check MySQL health. Right, that's our plugin that we just compiled, and it's actually in that directory, this path under user local Nagios lib executable. So we just provide it -h for host, and then argument 1, and then port, argument 2, and our next file we configure is going to show the values that the arguments will take on. So the arguments will be passed into. So go to username, and again it's going to be passing the Nagios user and the password we defined initially to be argument 4. And the last thing is the mode. Again, you can define a single command and pass in different modes. So when we configure the MySQL server configuration file for Nagios, we're going to define the mode. So again, you can define several different services using several different modes and calling this command. So I'll show you what I mean in a second when we go over and configure that file. So this is the objects file. So once we're done configuring our objects file and defining, this is the commands.conf file. So once we're done defining our command and configuring it, we will now go ahead and find our MySQL configuration file for Nagios. So there's a client, so the Linux client file will have services defined, and the services will call this command and pass it the correct arguments. So in our example here, it is in the same directory, so I'm going to go ahead and VI, and in our case it's called Linux client, but of course I have any name. That's what I just called it here. I usually go towards the bottom again, or at least near a related service sometimes. So in this case, it might be next to my web server. So, in this case, my example, my SQL server is related to our web server, so I put it next to each other. That's just how I like to do it, so it's easier for me to find and categorize. So you can look at some of the other examples of how we define a service. I'm going to go ahead and use local service, and that's just calling a template of services that it will configure if it's not already configured in here. It'll take a generic value. So we select host name, localhost of our Linux client, and we define scribe service. So again, this could just be a string. So if you're defining multiple services to call that plugin, you could say one, for example, is uptime, another one is thread count, another one is slave. So you kind of customize the service for the way you're passing in arguments to your command. So we're going to do check command, And check command, again, it's going to call the command we defined. So let's go ahead and call the command we defined in command.conf, and it's check underscore MySQL underscore health. And here's the arguments. Argument 1 is the IP address. Argument 2 is the port. And this is standard MySQL port. Argument 3 is the user in MySQL to connect to the database and the user's password to connect to the database. Again, the firewall must be, the port must be open on your firewall for this to work. And the mode we're passing is uptime. So this is one example. We could just quickly copy and paste a second service. Just change the name from maybe MySQL uptime to MySQL connections. So if I want to do a quick check, and everything's going to remain the same except when I'm passing in from the last argument, that's going to be passed into mode. So thread connections, that's connected. Alright, and it's pretty straightforward from there. I'm going ahead and save this, restart our Nagios server. This will check for any syntax errors, so if you accidentally typed in anything wrong, hopefully this will help you troubleshoot that. It'll pop right up. So we see here that my 2 new services have been added to my Nagios interface. It's pending its first check. Give it a few minutes, and there's my plugin working. So I got my database server being checked, its connection and uptime. So it says 1 connection, and it's been up for 112 minutes. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this is helpful. Be sure to monitor your server and services today. Otherwise, I will see you guys next time, and subscribe to get updates. Bye, guys.